It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Anyway, hey, I haven't done a creative rant in a really long time, so I apologize to all my loyal fans out there that have been begging me for a creative rant. Um, we pieced this together. A friend of mine, Ryan, who's a guest today. Say hi, Ryan.
Hey, how you doing?
So Ryan is with Avanti,
You got it. You got it.
marketing or branding.
Branding. Well, we do
And
marketing too.
he recently had a change in life stuff, putting all his skills that he's learned from being agency side, now doing it for himself in his own business. And we partnered up on a lot of things because we crossover with what we do, and crossover as in like he's building websites, some graphic design,
yeah.
logo design, storytelling, and
Story
then mine
brand.
is video, also branding, also web design.
Right. There's a kind of, they kind of marry together a little bit, right? You know, you can't have one without the other.
So it worked really well to kind of partner together, and then also spread those tasks and duties and new projects across more than just yourself, because that's part of, you know, the challenge with running an agency, being a creative, and most people don't like to really, when you're freelance, you try to not identify as an agency. Like I don't want to, because it puts me in a new level of, and might put me at risk with my clients who are agents.
Yeah, but
agencies.
I think there's also a big difference too between being truly freelance, where you are everything, right? So you're doing your own lead generation, you're doing your own fulfillment, you're having your account management conversations with your clients. Like, it's a lot for one person to do. But that also means, so while you have total control over everything that you're doing, that also means that you are limited, right? You can only take on so much. So I think as you are growing, and you go from solopreneur into entrepreneur and you're running an actual agency, that's when you start bringing on additional help, which means you can grow and scale so much quicker. So I think there's a slight variation on the two. I think most people who are starting their businesses do start off solopreneur, right? You got to start somewhere. But very quickly, if you're being successful, you find out you need additional help. So yeah, having somebody come in and help take those tasks on is what makes it possible to keep growing.
Yeah, I think with freelancers though, I think some freelancers like myself started off freelance, built a business, find it more difficult to hand off tasks, as opposed to someone in your position who was agency, went freelance, and almost as a necessity, it comes natural to you to like delegate some of those duties. I know with with what we do, it's very difficult for me to reach out, or challenging more so to like trust people to do that, or even treat my clients right, not specifically, also every time I expose someone to a client of mine, I risk them not treating my client the way I would, or potentially stealing my client, right? Or the client going directly to them.
Well, I mean, so obviously, right, not without jumping into, all the legalities and everything, right? But you should protect yourself. You should have proper paper in place, So that means vendor agreements, so that you don't have somebody who's coming in to help you who's going to go try and poach your client. But I mean, that's kind of a whole thing in of itself. But as far as like delegating tasks, I think it's a little bit different mindset. So the way in which I look at it is, and while I have some creative background, right, I'm not a creative in the way in which you are creative, right? So you are creative through and through. So from vision all the way through to the final product, you're touching it almost every step of the way. And while I do that to make sure that our brands are moving in the direction they need to go, I lean on people and their expertise, right? So it's very easy for me to talk to a client, kind of get a gauge for what their personality's like, and know in my head who is going to be the person who's going to shoot that commercial for them, who's going to be the person who I'm going to set them up for headshots with, who's going to be that graphic designer that needs to be that hands-on with that account. And account management is a huge part of it too, right? Personalities don't always match. So you have to know who's going to be the right fit for that client. So there is a slight difference in that too. But yeah, I look at it as leaning on somebody else's expertise who wants to be part of the overall growth, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you have to want to grow the company. If you don't, that's
I don't all the time.
what want to grow your own company.
Yeah. It scares me sometimes to take on more clients than I can personally manage. And I think up until last year, I'm almost 20 years into Spectacle.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And it's up until this year, it's always been like, I have to look at every project. If something falls through on another with a freelancer or a creative, am I able to pick up that slack, right? Because ultimately it comes down to, they are my client, they expect my quality of service. And it's funny because most of the time pricing is secondary to this stuff, right? Like,
No, it's all about value, 100%.
it's all about that value, and it's all about, so for me, it's like, yeah, the point is to grow, but also you can grow too fast, right? Like you can bring on too much, and then you're not servicing the current clients in the way that you were.
No, I mean,
So,
that's true. I mean, I think there's a balance between setting boundaries and expectations with clients, right? So like if you set a precedent with them that the minute they call you, you're going to pick up the phone, it could be 11 o'clock at night, and you're going to hop on the phone with them, that is what that client is going to expect going forward. And to me, I mean, having experienced this firsthand with different companies, right? I'm not going to say any names or anything like that, but there are companies that do it well and companies that don't do it well. And establishing that baseline with a client is so important to managing those expectations. If you have expectations with a client that's normal for any business, right? Hey, we're available, 9 to 5, Monday through, Friday. We have a little bit of flex time here, or you have this point person if you need to reach out. That's all normal, right? But if you don't have that support in the way in which you've built your company or the way in which you manage your clients, then you start having those calls come in, and the minute you miss that one call, that's that midnight call, and I'm using that as an extreme, right? Now you've let them down. And so that's kind of where the relationship may go sour. So just maintain those expectations from the very beginning, I think that's the easiest way to avoid it.
Yeah, I agree. I think also a lot of freelancers or creatives that try to manage their own solopreneur. I hate that term, by the way. I just want to throw that out there.
You got to get that buzzword in there. Yeah.
I do agree. Managing a client is 100% key. Managing expectations. We used to have a rule, and we still kind of have this rule, but like if 3 clients have the same issue, it's a problem that we did.
Oh, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Like if it's one-off, it could just be a particular situation or a picky client.
Well, and what I'm talking about is the difference between, like, it's different if you drop the ball, right? If there's a certain thing that you're supposed to deliver on a client for and you don't, then yeah, you should own that, right? But I was talking about that initial building that relationship with the client to establish, like, what is your relationship going to look like? Because if you build good relationships with clients, they'll last for years and years and years. I can't remember who it was, but one of my mentors, coming up would tell me that, you can have mediocre service and amazing relationships with clients, and they'll be there forever. But you could deliver the best product in the world, have a mediocre relationship with that client, and they're going to drop you. So not to say you should ever deliver on the mediocre work, but just that's the importance of having a genuine connection with your accounts. So
yeah, and a lot of like photographers are afraid to talk about pricing because it's always photographers put so much stock into value. To them, value is perceived as the money, right? And it is value to the service that you're getting. It is the money compared to the service that you're being provided. But I could talk about pricing all day long. I have no secrets with pricing because my clients don't hire me because of my pricing. They hire me because they like working with me. They like the service I provide. and the amount of money they pay me makes that worth it, right? Now, if I gave someone my pricing and they try to undercut me and they go to my client, there's a good chance that client's not going to go with them because they may have gone with a value service before or a value vendor before and it got them burnt, or they don't have that. They know that when I show up, I'm going to perform and I'm going to deliver what I am paid for.
Well, and that's because you
it's-
have that relationship that you have built with them over time, right? So
There is no camera 3. I just want everyone to know I accidentally cut to camera 3 and there is no camera 3. So back to camera 1, which is Ryan.
Well, I was just saying, so like what you're talking about is a really great example of how that relationship matters. Yeah, you totally did that.
Dude, I totally we're shooting in a really tight spot here. So Ryan, if he just flails his arm too much to the left there, it's right there, and then I'm right in front of his shot.
You just totally ruined the illusion
OTS
for all of our
over the
guests
shoulder.
here,
We're
yeah.
doing OTS here. So. Because
It's good for conversation, though. It does work well for
It
that.
is. It's good for and honestly, this isn't about you guys. This is about us. This isn't for the comfort of you. We set this up for the conversation, right? So you should be watching. You should be listening to us and watching The Boys, is what you should be doing, or
it's a good
the
show,
new
yeah.
Game of Thrones, right? But anyway, not to
No, it's
totally
fine.
interrupt you and sidetrack this, but. I don't even know what you were saying.
Well, so we were just talking about how amazing and valuable you were with the camera and how you would never, accidentally upstage or put your hand in something when you were shooting something for a client.
Yeah, I'd never make that mistake.
Never.
I think it was more about the pricing and the value of that and offer and not being afraid to lose clients based on pricing.
Yeah, that's another whole thing. So and by the way, I do want to specify this is not a, bashing client session or anything like that at all, right? I mean, I absolutely...
It could be. No.
I actually enjoy the clients that we work with. And I think some of that comes from kind of what you're talking about with it's not about the pricing. So we're selective in who we pick, right? We want people that are going to be a good fit for us, and we want to know that we're a good fit for them. So, when we have conversations with clients, I always find out what it is that they're trying to do, right? Because people will come to me for all types of reasons. Oh, I want marketing. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I want branding. And it's like, well, what does that mean to you?
Yeah.
I mean? There's the textbook definition, and then there's what you think it means. And more often than not, it's not what the client thinks it is.
Yeah.
So I think there's a bit of education that goes along with that too. Hey,
100%.
What do you need? And let me tell you why we recommend this versus something else.
So I was running into that with headshots. So I would have clients come in and they'd be like, I want headshots. And I'd do these headshots. And then they'd get done and they'd be like, but these are just headshots. They wouldn't say headshots. They'd say, these are just simple. And I'm like, well, headshots are simple. That's
Right.
what headshots are. No, I want and then they start using words that they, weren't using before.
Those buzzwords
and all of
we
a
were
sudden,
talking about.
yeah, and
Yeah,
then all of
it's
a sudden it's like, oh, you don't want headshots, you want portraits, you want environmental portraits, you want this. And then I realized, oh, on my website where I put headshots, I was cross-contaminating my galleries, right? And so
okay.
I had some artsier headshots on there, or stuff that dipped a little bit into portraiture, right? Clients don't know the difference between a headshot and a portrait.
Well,
They have no idea, right? So I had to go and clean that up. I had to remove anything that was from that gallery specifically that wasn't a pure headshot. And that cleared that up. So when people called me, they went, I need a portrait or I need a headshot, because they knew by looking at my website, those two services were there, but they're separate, right? And that is part of what we do is we have to train them into that terminology of what that means, right? They may not even know where they see it from your website. You could be confusing your clients more than your clients are confusing themselves.
No, I mean, that's a fair point. I think, when I'm thinking edutainment, I mean, I guess there's a level of that, yeah.
Trademark.
When I'm thinking of, educating a client, I think it's more along the lines of, hey, okay, so what are you trying to do? So client may come to us and say, I'm trying to grow my business. So, okay, well, that's pretty broad. What are you trying to grow specifically? Is it your personal brand? Is it a specific product line that you're trying to grow? Are you just trying to rebrand your overall business? And then kind of after you start picking at those things, you start to really kind of find out what it is that's motivating them. And then we can start having the conversations. Okay, you don't need headshots. You need a personal branding session. You know what I mean? Which means you need multiple outfits, you need different locales, you need stuff that's specific to your industry, but you also need some things that are representative of you as an entrepreneur and what you do, that are personal, that's not just industry specific. So, that's what I mean when I'm talking about like education. For some reason that word, like.
No, I get it. And it's also back to what you were saying about being selective of clients. I don't think freelancers or creatives are as selective as they should be, because they need money, they need to be paid, they need to eat, they need to pay the bills. But what they don't possess at the time, especially if they're at the beginning of their journey as a freelancer, is the foresight to say, this client's actually going to cost me money in the long run, because the wrong client is just as bad as the wrong vendor, right? So it took me a long time to learn that. And bad clients will eat up your time, they will eat up your margins, they will eat up everything, and they will distract you from the clients who pay you on time, who don't bully you or make you pixel push things to a specific spot. And you'll know those clients value your opinions, they value your expertise, they ask a lot of questions, and then they don't fight back on things they don't know about. I have a lot of clients that I've had in the past that you present to them options and based on years of experience, and they just go, I'm going to stick to what I have, right? And people get attached to their brand. They get attached to their image. Sure. They get attached to everything.
I hope they would,
Yeah, but there's a
Otherwise,
point.
I'm not doing my job right.
But there's a point. Yeah, but it's different when they're attached to a brand that they developed on their own.
I mean, yes.
And when that brand is technically wrong. And it's this fine walking on eggshells, like, hey,
so I mean,
let's talk about your logo.
I mean, I think you hit on something that's really important, though, right? So a lot of times you think about as business owners, right? One of the things that you're trying to do is just get up and running, right? You can't start making money until you're up and running. So you can't even look at the possibility of growing your brand or making any kind of significant sales until you have the very basic elements in place. So what typically gets rushed over are things like the logo, or more common than not. And to me, obviously, right, like I'm biased, I work in the space, but if I could name like the number one mistake that I see new businesses do, is they skip their story brand. So, and I know that's also a buzzword too, and some people are like, oh, story brand, but they really don't fully grasp the concept of what it is. I mean, the easiest way when I think about it and I talk to a client is, who are you? What does your brand do? If your brand, the one question I love asking people is, if your brand was a person, what are they like? And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, what do they eat?
Yeah.
What kind of movies do they like? And they're like, well, it's a weird question to ask, but if it's not, when you think about it, because if your brand is a person, that means they talk to people a certain way. It means that they select their friendships a certain way, in the same way which you select your clients. So if you are a certain way and you are your brand, which is the case for most solopreneurs, solopreneurs, right? Then they need to match, they need to mesh with you, right? So you need to know who you are first before you can start selling your product.
Yeah.
So
I agree with that. I think it also plays into a second thing, a second important element, is that people should treat their brand as an asset and as a living, breathing
yeah, I
element.
mean, it's like you set it and you never do anything.
No, you need usually with like when I do brand Bibles or brand guides for clients, I try to explain to them, like, This is for you. This is for you to have the tools you need to defend people who don't understand your brand, or defend your brand against people who don't understand your brand. For instance, if you look at some of the like really great logos out there, right? They have stories in there that tell these stories, and they have brand Bibles and guides to empower their employees to then tell that story. Not everyone's a creative. They can't see those visual cues in there.
Mm-hmm.
And some people might be like, oh, this is their logo. I'll just slap it on here and do it to our brand. And then this gives you the power to go, well, I would let you do that, but our brand guide says you can't, right? So what I try to tell them is this is your brand guide. And you can make changes to this based on things you want and feedback you've gotten, but it has to be based on what you want. No one externally has a say in your brand until you collectively decide, okay, we're going to update our brand from this. And brands update their
Oh yeah, pretty regular.
big brands
Yeah.
update them all the time, right? And they refresh them and they renew them, and I just learned the other day the Nike logo, the swoosh, the icon,
Yeah.
that designer got $35 for that.
Oh, the original
$35.
design?
The original design got $35. And it is probably the most recognizable logo of all time, right? So your brand, your logo doesn't have to be expensive, right? But what that logo did was it took into consideration a lot of elements went into it. And as simple as it is, it created a lot of things and resonated with a lot of people. So when you're looking at branding or your logo or the way you present yourself, because that's even part of your brand as well, what story does that tell people who don't know, right?
Well, I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that too, right? Because you're talking about Nike as a brand, but when I ask people like, okay, well, what is Nike's brand, or what do they sell? Everybody thinks what? Shoes, right? That's not though. Like when you actually go and you look at their social profile or their presence, what you see is athleticism. You see success. You see competitive spirit, right? There's a lot more to it than just the swoosh. So yeah, sure, swoosh is part of it, but their brand has grown over time. So you're talking about evolution of a brand, right?
Yeah.
So super important. I think if you stay stagnant, for too long, then you lose your relevancy. So you have to do something but you can't go so off brand that you're not who you are anymore. So
well, and you touched on a good point too, is that when presented with the project of this brand or this logo, the designer wasn't told to design for a shoe company. They were told to design for an athletic company,
Boom.
Show movement.
There you go.
And I think a lot of clients that come to us, they want to sell their product through their logo. And that's when it becomes too literal. And we've all seen the literal logos, where it's like right on the nose, or they have too many gimmicks.
I mean, I think it depends. Like if you're selling honey and you've got a bee on your logo, okay, that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's still creative ways to do it.
But it doesn't have to be there.
It doesn't have to be there.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying and again, we're talking about a mark, but you also have your typography, your colors, all these other things come into play that represent your overall brand. And then, like you said, you have the Bible. That's how you go and you use it. Like there are brands that have amazing, marks, have amazing color palettes. They've done everything that they should have done to make it right. But then in practice, when you go out and look at the content and stuff that they're creating, you're like, they had gold, and they literally just kind of walked right past it. You're like,
oh, I've seen it. I've seen it. It's just I don't understand it all the time. I don't get it. And we all struggle with it. It's every designer out there. It's every freelance. I sent you something the other day and you didn't help by saying, you can lead a horse to water.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, I just want to take their head and like shove it in the water and be like, drink it.
But it's true though, right? I mean, like you have the expertise, right? So, and as you mentioned, the clients that kind of recognize that, right? I mean, if it was easy, everyone would do it. So, you hire the people, or you bring people to your team that are going to help provide that guidance. They can only lead you there, right? Nobody can make you just say, yeah, this is great and I'm going to accept it, you know. Although I will say when it comes to clients, like I like the clients that are right in between. You were talking about earlier clients that were like 100% like, no, we like our stuff, we've been with it forever, we don't want to make a transition. And then you have the clients that are like, yeah, I love it. And it's like, did you even open it? Did you even look at it? Do you understand it? And they're like, no, it's good. I like that healthy balance. Like I want a client to be invested in their brand and ask questions, but still, you know, allow the process to be organic. And it's what it is. It's a process. I don't expect to put a logo in front of you the first time and you'd be like, oh, that's it. That's amazing. That's great. I mean, if it happens,
I have had that happen once, and I was happy, but it didn't work out in the long run. It just meant that the client wasn't invested or engaged in the process, and they didn't care, right? And the thing is that I like the balance too. I don't think it just needs to be me walking. It needs to be a collaboration.
It is.
But
yeah, it's a partnership.
I don't agree with people who just hire agencies or creatives and steamroll them and pixel push them into spots. I don't agree with that. I think that destroys creativity, it destroys creatives, and you're not using the best effectiveness. I also don't agree with clients that walk in and go, I don't know, you're the creative, and then give you nothing, because that's not the way you get the most.
Yeah, because they
from
do
a
have
creative.
something in their mind, they just haven't articulated. So you could try 100 different times to get it right, but if you don't have any source to pull from, that's an unrealistic expectation to assume that you're just going to magically pluck that one idea out of the air and it's going to be the right one.
Well, it doesn't exist. And
Right.
and I used to spin my wheels or waste time so much by, okay, let me just get them something. Let me just get them something to satisfy them. And then they're like, nah, that's not what I want. And then magically, here's how it plays out. Hey, I need a new logo.
Story time.
What do you like? I don't know. You know, you're the creative, you do it. All right. Well, I did a little bit of research on your company. Here's what I noticed online. Here's where I think you can improve, and here's where I think we can kind of go. Here's 4 logos. Oh, I don't like any of those.
I think that's too much, too.
I don't like, well, yeah, okay, 2. Whatever. Here's 1 logo. Here's something, right?
Gotcha, okay.
I don't like any of those. Here's what I was thinking. And then all of a sudden, it's everything they were thinking, everything they weren't thinking, everything they hate, everything they don't hate. And you know, I even ask my clients, what don't you like? Show me 3 logos that you absolutely hate.
I think that's
right?
smart.
You know, but then all of a sudden it's these things start coming. Now, I used to take that very hard, right? And as a creative, you're like, you weren't there. Oh, why don't we try this font? You weren't there. It doesn't work. Here's why. And it's more about time wasting, right? So then now what I do is I don't look at rejected logos as a failure. I look at 3 options that now we know not to go down that road.
I mean, that's, yeah.
Right? So is it wasted time? Yeah. But I also charge for that now. And I think knowing that that's typically where the process is going to go, that's why we charge what we charge for logos, right? Because I know that there's going to be a potential of 3 options that you won't like.
I mean,
it is amazing to me that some clients don't have opinions until after they have options.
Well,
right?
I mean, it's a visual thing, right? You have to see it first to know whether or not you like it, which I do understand and I totally respect. But what I would say is for somebody in your shoes, right? So you're a freelancer. So I would come to you and say, hey, I need a logo design, right? So one of the things that I think is more helpful is, so for us, when we have a client come in, one of the things we do is we put them through StoryBrand. So they sit down, do a couple sessions with our StoryBrand guide who's going to basically outline who they are, right? So that kind of thing, back to what I was saying before, like, do you know who you are, right? You can't start talking about your product till you know who you are. But then when I come to you and I say, hey, Rich, we need a logo for this client, and I hand you a StoryBrand guide, and it talks about their background, where they came from, what their products are, the way in which their products are made, their favorite color, everything, right? You put it to, and then how formal are you? Are you you take yourself seriously? Are you guys a little bit more high end? Like, where do you fit in that scope?
Yeah.
Give all of that to you and say, hey, can you make a logo? How much more empowering is it for a graphic designer to now have the tools that they need in order to put it together. So, because then you can tell a story.
Yeah. Yeah. But here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to provide that. They're going to sign off on that. Now I'm going to provide a logo, and they're going to go, this is actually, we want, I don't know, let's say it's a microscope company. We want the M, the I, and the C all to be microscopes, because we have 3 different microscopes. That's what we want. And then we want the rest of the words to be individual bacteria. And we don't care if you could read it. We don't care if you could see it. That's what we want.
Yeah.
And that's a bit extreme, but that is what happens. But, and again, I think the brand story or the story brand guide
Right.
is an amazing asset.
It's foundational.
I think it's great. I think right now, some clients may not even know it exists, but also I think some of them, it may be a luxury item for them. But telling them like, hey, this is the foundation of the house.
I'd say it's not. Yeah.
Your logo and your branding is the paint on the walls. Let's get this fixed first, so that everything you do from here on out your money will be well spent, as opposed to spinning your wheels, going back and forth with revisions. Your website will take that. We could paste all of that copy into ChatGPT and create a voice. There's a million things you can do with that. So I think it's good. I think even as a creative, working on those exercises to help you understand who you are as well would be beneficial too. So where it's not just, here I am, I'm Rich, who takes photos and does, creative rants kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on something though that's really important, and it is one of the obstacles that you face, right? Is we can't really afford it, or it's not essential, or whatever the thought process is, and that's where the education comes in. That's where the shifting in thought process comes, because you did mention it's the foundation of the house. So I don't know if you've ever tried to put up a house before and you don't have a solid foundation. You can put up as much as you want. The first storm comes along and everything collapses, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's just reshaping that. And again, a part of it is because not every marketing company does that. I'd be wagered to say, a good portion of, I don't want to put an exact percentage on it, but like a large percentage of marketing companies will say, let's do lead generation, or let's go ahead and create you a website. But there's nothing behind it. There's no substance. It's just
because
empty.
some agencies come into the fold in different spots, and then not all agencies are created equal in regards to what they do. There's content agencies, which are very few and far in between, and then there's media buy agencies, and then there's marketing agencies.
Right.
They all dabble in a lot of things, but very few of them, and I think it's a survival thing. I think, gone are the days of the Mad Men style marketing, and there's still people holding on to that, but it's morphed and it's changed. Everything we do has become more available. So the showing people the value behind what you do is more than just the equipment. I mean, these cameras that we're shooting with right now are $800 a pop. To some people that's expensive, but it's not, it's very obtainable to some companies, to a lot of companies, right? What you have to show is value to use that equipment and to push that a little bit further. So,
well, I mean, you have to hit pain points, right? You have to know what those pain points are. When you mentioned like the change since like the days of Mad Men and everything like that with ads, I even actually heard an article that was one of those radio articles, right? Like a podcast. They were talking about the ubiquity of ads during the 90s, right?
Yeah.
80s and 90s. So like, when we grew up, right, we could probably recite, I don't know, half a dozen jingles right now, right? Because that was just the way it was. But the thing that was powerful about them is any advertising, any money that went into those brands, everybody saw it.
Yeah.
So if you were watching primetime television, everybody knows Meow Mix, right? Everybody could probably start singing it in their head right now, or Maybelline, or any of these types of, again, like I remember stuff when I was a kid too, watching Saturday morning cartoons and all the toys and stuff that were on there, right? But it was one platform. It was your television. And you had radio too, and you had, print. But the one thing that everybody remembers is all these jingles that they heard.
Yeah.
Now everything's very specifically tailored. It's based off of your behaviors, what you interact with, which websites you go to, which social media platforms you're on. So you and I might get an ad for the same product, but it might look totally different.
Yeah.
So
I like that. I think that's smarter, right? I think it's more efficient marketing. I think when it comes to individuals, like even us right now, we're on 6 platforms. We tried to get on 12, right? Right. And the thing is like and we get clients all the time. They're like, oh, I want a viral video, but it has to be short. It has to be short because no one has attention spans anymore, right? And you get these clients that think they know, they think they know the audience that they're talking to, when really, I tell people all the time, and I say this a lot, where I'm like, the term binge watching is new. Yeah. That's new. That's fairly new, right? So it's not that
you never could binge watch a show. You'd have to wait.
People have more attention span now than they've ever had, right? They just don't have the tolerance for shitty content, right? So instead of focusing on the length, focus on the quality, tell better tell better stories, right? Because we've completely thrown out the hero's journey, right? We don't, it's like, why are these movies so good? Why is Back to the Future so good? It's definitely not the effects. It's definitely not the makeup.
I still like the effects.
Oh, yeah. Well, go back and look at it. Go back and look at Toy Story 1.
Yeah.
Oh, falls apart real quick, buddy. But the storyline's there. And I'm on the remaster. Like, we need to remaster Toy Story 1 just so we could see how it would look. Because, dude, Buzz Lightyear's lips are cutting through his face. Like, they didn't understand the technology back then. It's not good.
It was groundbreaking for its time.
Oh, groundbreaking. It also broke everything, believe me, it doesn't. The dog, look at the dog alone. Nightmare fuel, right? But back then you didn't look at it. You just, you watched it and you were like, this is great. This is good storytelling.
Yeah.
So what I try to tell people is like, instead of focusing on the length, your video should be as long as it needs to be. It'll be as long as we need it to be, but let's aim. Let's aim between 30 to 90, right? 90 seconds. Let's aim between that. Oh, is it long format? Let's go a little bit further, right? People will watch Joe Rogan's podcast. Average podcast length is going to be 6 hours. 6 hours, right? What does he do? He takes the highlighted stuff, which we'll do here, and he breaks them down into bite-sizable, snackable content and pushes it out there. Those become like memorable moments, but then people get, okay, let me go and watch and listen to what these guys have to say. You can't do that right out the gate. You can't do that. You can't force that, right?
No.
And I think some clients could benefit from learning from other successful viral campaigns. The Squatty Potty comes to mind, right?
Oh, yeah.
Here. Imagine being in that boardroom.
Yeah.
And pitching that. Here's what I want to do.
Yeah. What a unicorn. And
I want to have a unicorn sitting on a conveyor belt.
And ice cream cones.
He is going to ship rainbows into ice cream cones. And then we're going to have the host, the narrator, he's going to eat it.
Yeah.
Right? That's what we're going to do. And there's an interview with the inventor of the Squatty Potty. And she was like, they asked her, like, why did you go with this idea? And she's like, it was not my first pick.
Oh, of course not.
And she said, she's like, I hired these people for a reason and I trusted them. And she did. And overnight, it was a huge success.
Oh, yeah, because before that campaign, who would ever thought that was something that was important to invest in? You know what I mean? Like, the health angle was definitely not what got people to purchase that product.
No, it was a shitting unicorn.
Which is their brand now.
It's their brand. and no one, I just,
it's part of their brand.
It's such a genius pitch. It's a dream client. Like we're dealing with this with a client where we're pitching an idea, and it's very like they're very on the fence because they may not understand it, but we're so passionate about it that we're pitching it in a way that's like, and we have to guide them to just trust us, please.
Right.
This is
Well,
we're
I mean,
not, it's.
Well, you're also talking about like you said, being in that board meeting, right? Like, how would that have gone? Like, you just have a bunch of people sitting around, I'm sorry, you want to do what, right? But they're not seeing it with the same creative vision. You can already see what the product is going to be, the end product, not the product we're selling, but like the end, encapsulated commercial spot, video spot, whatever it is. You know what it's going to look like. And so when you're having this conversation with them, you're coming from all right, I'm going to do this with camera 2, and then I'm going to do a cut shot to that, and then it's going to do this reveal, and it's going to be amazing, and the product's going to sell. They're not thinking that. They're looking at this going, this is different.
Yeah.
So
is this going to offend people? Is this going to do
right?
this?
How is it going to make our brand look? Is it being too silly? But I mean, I think that's something too. Like you talk about Squatty Potty, it's silly, right?
Yeah.
But it's intentionally silly because things that people watch are comedic.
Yeah.
They want to have entertainment value. If I just walked in and I started selling a product and talking about fine craftsmanship and white glove service and all this other stuff, it sounds so robotic.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to tell the story that goes along with it. Now you can do a craftsman story, but it has to tell the journey of the artisan maybe, right? That
people want to be educated, entertained.
They want to laugh.
So
Back to comedy,
or they want to laugh, right?
Yeah.
And the last one, to me, is the most. It's the most critical. It's the one that will always get you attention online, and it's the say something wrong.
Oh yeah.
Say something
Type
wrong.
something wrong.
If
say
you
something
can,
wrong.
if you can just put something in your video that is wrong, people love correct.
how many
There
views
is nothing more. People love correcting people online more than anything.
Yeah.
More than porn.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. It's
Well,
correcting people online, porn.
So
this is where it would be.
I'm gonna leave politics 100% out of this, but anybody who's on social media knows how much people want to push their point of view, right?
And correct people.
You cannot scroll through a feed without seeing somebody make an opinion and multiple responses saying you're wrong.
Yes.
It's crazy. So.
And we did it. I did it for Evolve. We did something where, and it's tricky because you have a client that positions themselves as experts in their field.
Yeah.
Which is what everyone does, right? Every client is an expert in their field. How do you say something wrong without looking like an idiot?
Yeah.
There's a guy online. It's he has a TikTok. It's powerful websites you should know. Number
I love his
526.
stuff. It's good. Yeah.
Look at the tabs on his window. Look at the tabs. Next time you see one of his, look at the tab in the top right. It's always a second tab. It'll say, why do people smoke marinara? It's genius. He did one. He's like, powerful websites you should know for when you're bored. Did you know if you go to this website, you could play any retro video game you want? Like this one. Look, I'm walking around as Zelda. And dude.
It's Link.
It's
right?
Link.
Yeah.
You can't play as Zelda, right? But he knows. And I'm like, this dude does it. He gets it. And all the comments. How dare you?
Yeah.
How dare you? Well, technically, do that. If you want video, if you want engagement on your social media, say something that people can correct you on, and be okay with it.
Correct.
Right? Like you have to not read the comments or read the comments and engage. But the best is if you can do it in a way that trolls them and also brings you a little bit of humor.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
a little bit of satisfaction.
So
you know
anybody who earlier heard me mispronounce edutainment.
Edutainment. Yeah.
Was on purpose.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's the other thing is you have to own it. You have to. You definitely have to own it. And maybe that goes down to like maybe that reveals something bigger with our culture that we're in right now in society is we've lost the ability, in my opinion, to admit we don't know something or we were wrong, right? So having that, knowing like I'm going to put something out there, I'm going to put myself out there, and these little mistakes are what people are going to catch on to. And it doesn't need to be long. It doesn't need to be short. Look at the Hawk Tua girl.
Oh yeah.
Hawk Tua, how long did it take her to say that?
Yeah.
3 seconds?
But to be fair, she had no idea that it was going to blow up to what it was, right? Like this was just she did not know that she was going to be like the number one.
What
share
did
team,
she have
so.
though? What did she do? She did something authentic.
Oh, correct.
And genuine
Well,
and real, talking real. But that clip alone isn't long.
No, but
right?
I think you hit on something else too. Authenticity it's not replicable. You cannot do it, right? So like,
well, you can't fake authentic.
That's what I'm saying. Like you can't make something, package it up, and expect that it's going to come across the same way in which a conversation is going to have, right?
Yeah.
So, that's why this kind of format I think is much more relatable in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like I would much rather watch something that was entertaining and engaging but authentic over this polished image of some total studio setup with it's just not.
You can't force authenticity, and
No.
I've seen people do it. Did you know that?
Well, they've tried to do it.
They've tried to do it.
Yeah.
Orlando tried to do it. Do you know what Orlando's dish? Do you know what the Orlando dish is?
Like the signature food of
The
Orlando?
signature food. If you had to pick the Orlando signature dish, what would you say it was? What is Orlando known for?
I mean, are you talking outside of tourism? Because
Just-
tourism, it's going to be
Just
anything.
Orlando.
The
If you
theme
thought,
parks.
yeah, if you thought about Orlando as a dish.
I guess throw out one here is probably like a Mickey Mouse ice cream pop,
Or like a
something
turkey
that.
leg, right?
Turkey leg,
A turkey
maybe
leg at the theme park.
yeah, something
so
like that.
they tried to do an Orlando dish. They tried to. They did a contest. They had an Orlando dish. They announced it. It was some kind of dessert that no one had ever heard of, right? And to me, it was a great case study in authenticity. You can't fake authenticity, right? And to me, it's like if Orlando had a flavor, it would be artificial, right? Like that would be, it's like, own it. We are the theme park capital. Everything's artificial here. It's a theme park. Own that. Buy it, lean into it. Come here to escape reality.
Right.
We are fake. That's the whole point.
Right.
But
it's a good kind, right? I think that's the thing too. So like we're talking about authenticity and like how you can't replicate it, but there's a difference between intentional, fantasy land, right?
Yeah.
Versus, trying to make something, authentic when it's not. Like,
Yes.
you know what I mean? And I think I agree with you on that, right? So yeah, the brand for Orlando is tourism.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's our export.
It's our number one
Florida's export is memories. That's what our export is. It's memories. And as locals and local vendors and freelancers, it causes it almost forces us to create things that are authentic, right? It's very hard for arts and cultures to grow organically in Orlando because we're up against Lady Gaga at the Kia Center, or it's so my point is like when we do build it here, it is more authentic, but you can't force it. It has to be authentic.
Yeah, because I would say there are some very small, restaurateurs and beauty shops and different smaller businesses that are niche, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at Thornton Park or you look at some of the the areas that are surrounding Orlando, they have their own culture, they have their own vibe.
Correct.
And honestly, if anybody has not had a chance to check them out and you are local, I would definitely tell you to go check them out because the pulse there is 100% different than it is going to a theme park, right? There is an authenticity there,
And it's
original,
and they're built different. They've had to build that. Their journey to build that authenticity is harder than if I go to New Jersey and open up a pizza shop. I'm riding the coattails of decades and centuries, decades at least, of pizza being known in that area, right?
Yeah.
Now, it's for me to ruin if I don't offer an authentic product, but the point is like I can open up a New York pizza and instantly I have some credibility, right? Orlando restaurants, venues, or retailers don't have that. they have to build that from the ground up, right? And you do see it with Four Rivers. You see it with these, Gnarly Barley over on Ivanhoe now, right? Brands that have, it's like concrete, and you see a flower growing through it.
Oh yeah,
Right?
I mean, that's a good analogy.
That's everything in Orlando, or other transient, touristy kind of markets.
Well, and I
right?
think, I mean, since we're talking, branding and kind of, bringing that element into it, I think it's important to know your market.
Yeah.
Right. So, if I'm going to open a restaurant in downtown, I'm not trying to compete with, Victorian Albert's, out of the Grand Floridian, the however many multi-course meal and everything that it is.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what I'm trying to do. I may be trying to do some kind of fusion or deconstruction of something. I want to do something that's original and all my own. And people will come for that, right? But I think there is that component of being found. You can't, so this is kind of a segue into a slightly different topic, but I don't know how many business owners I can tell you I'll talk to, and they think that just because they open their brand or they have this amazing, they open their business and they've invested in a brand, image, that people magically show up.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well,
it's not Field of Dreams.
No, it's not. I mean, there is the elements that go into getting yourself listed on Google. There are the elements that go into having a well-maintained social profile, being consistent in content that you create. And again, it takes time. So if you're trying to do all this on your own, it's a lot to do, right? It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's necessary in order to be that flower that's growing up through that concrete, right? And people can do it. I mean, it's been done. I mean, it's not impossible.
I've seen people do it and then get so busy that they blow past it, and they may not think that it's important until it becomes important. Most of the time, in my experience, marketing tends to be an afterthought with most companies. It's not until you realize you need it that it might be too late. It's like, for me, it's like a cruise ship, right? Marketing is the navigator-ish, while the captain directs the ship. We need time to turn. This isn't like a, about face kind of thing. We need time to correct course. And you didn't get into this position overnight. It took time to get there. It's going to take time to get out of it. I think some people expect that magic bullet with everything. Their brand, if I just change my brand, it'll happen.
Right.
It's little things that change the course and then establish you in the future right? Yeah. Like, marketing's really investing in the future.
Well,
brand.
So you might appreciate this analogy, right? And I've shared this with some clients before too, when they're talking about where does branding and marketing, because there is some crossover between the two, but where does it fit in the overall, growth of your business? Like, when does it come into play? And as I was mentioning earlier, when you're starting out, you're trying to do all the paperwork, you're trying to file everything with the state, you're trying to make sure you have your equipment ordered and hire the right people, and then you just think that people are going to magically show up, right? You've done all this work, so people have to show up. But, and this is where I say you'll appreciate this, because I know this is going way back for you, right?
Yeah.
Way back when you were doing like weddings for photography, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember how many times, like, part of our conversations that we were like, hey, I was working, I had this other client come up and they want to do a wedding. I'm like, oh, cool. What's the budget? And they're like, oh, they wanted me to do it for like $50. And it's like, when you're thinking about that as your business, so you have this great, beautiful wedding, this huge ceremony you're putting on.
Yeah. Who's
going to remember it? Who's going to even know? Like, you have anything at all that's out there that's showing people that it's there?
Yeah.
You were there.
Yep. Oh, they spend all their money on food. It's like, the food was good. You remember what it tastes like?
Yeah.
No, the two things that last the longest, at least when I was doing weddings, they spent the least amount of money on.
Right.
The photos and the video, right? Photos and the video. We can cheat everything and make it look like a multi-million-dollar wedding, but no, we're going to give you $1,500 for a wedding. Let me tell you something.
I knew it was going to hit.
I would be hard pressed to, like, if someone presented me with amount of money, I'd probably turn it down. I don't care. You offered me $20,000 for a wedding, I'd turn it down.
Well, that's fine though. I mean, that's where you are now. But I'm just, as an analogy, right? So, for photographers, that is a place where photographers start, right? And so, you're like, hey, look, this is it pays the bills.
And it shouldn't. It shouldn't be. You should not You should not start weddings.
I don't think they're easy. I definitely don't think
Here's
it's like
what you should do. You should do a wedding. You should do a wedding. Try it out. Realize that it's god awful and it's horrible pay. It's horrible pay. Weddings for photographers, it's one of the only videographers and photographers are the only two vendors that have to deal with a bride almost 6 months before the wedding day and 6 months after. Right? So you're talking about at minimum a year of dealing with a client that wants to pay you for the work that they only see you do, which is a max 12 hours,
Right.
16-hour day.
Right.
And I've had it happen. They come in and they go, "Why is it so much? It's only 12 hours." No, it's
all the
not.
editing,
It's so
it's
much,
everything,
right?
yeah, the
And I
final
get that
package.
people get to that point. That the odds of you getting to the point where you can charge that much money for a wedding are pretty slim to none. So going into it saying, I'm going to do weddings, I love photography so much that I'm going to do weddings because that's a good way to pay the bills. It's absolutely not, because if you broke down how much time you spend with that client and how much time you gave that client with everything, it's less than minimum wage. Like honestly, if you broke down how much they're going to pay you for being new, for putting in the time, you're not getting paid anything.
So your advice
right?
would be, because obviously somebody, we wouldn't have wonderful wedding photos if we didn't have somebody who was doing it, right?
Yeah.
So, but I guess what I'm hearing you say is that's not the place where someone should start.
That is shooting weddings. If there are brilliant wedding photographers out there, masters at wedding photography, and what they have that other wedding photographers don't have, or people who are doing it for money, is they do it because they love shooting weddings. You cannot go into shooting weddings specifically to make money. The
Okay,
money
that's
helps.
fair.
My point is if you say I want to shoot weddings because I want to make money, get out, don't ever shoot it, do it as a second shooter, let them pay you your rate for being there, don't handle the client, and see how hard that is. People who make a lot of money and are successful at weddings are in it first because they love weddings, second because now they can charge money and they can make a lot of money at it, right?
Okay.
But it's not because they didn't get into it because of the money.
Well, I
right?
mean, so you totally illustrated though, like the point that I was trying to say is right.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of the afterthought, and there's so much more that goes into it. So don't make it the afterthought, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't, it will crush you as a creative to, I started in 2006, I started doing photography. I quit in 2012. I was going to sell my equipment. I hated it. I hated everything I was doing, producing. I hated my clients. I hated it all, right? Because every day it was rinse and repeat. And all I did was go online. I'd find photographers shooting stuff I wanted to shoot and constantly compare the garbage that I thought I was shooting, right? And not that what I was shooting was actual garbage. Like, let me clarify.
I mean, I've seen your work. It's
like,
amazing.
It's just like, for me, it wasn't at the level of what these other photographers were shooting, and I wasn't producing anything that I felt was worth like what people were paying me, right? And the reason is because I was neglecting my own vision, because I kept trying to just be a Wish version of another photographer. And I was just recycling, and I was like, oh, they're doing that, I can do that. Watch, trash the dress sessions. Oh, I can do that. Let me go do that, right? But I was doing it for money, right? It wasn't until I said, no, I'm going to only shoot what I want to shoot, and I'm going to shoot it the way I want to shoot. And then all of a sudden, like, it started to click. People started reacting to my photography differently. They started responding differently. They started asking me what I thought about things as opposed to pointing me to go shoot things. And the dynamic changed.
That's an important distinction too.
It's very important,
Yeah.
right? And then it dawned on me, it wasn't the equipment, it wasn't the celebrity or the experience. It was, I legitimately had been neglecting the only thing that separated me from every other photographer, and that was my ideas.
Well, I mean,
right?
I think it's important that you love what you do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I love what I do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, some clients, it's more challenging than others, but there's never a job that I'm on that I dislike what I'm doing. And I think that's really, really important. So you're right. I mean, and I will tell you, so for me, like I was doing the grind. I was doing the 9 to 5 grind, go in every day, check out analytics, make adjustments to campaigns, get on the phone
Do you
with
love
clients.
that?
I love it.
You love?
it. I do not love it.
Well, that's, yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's my equivalent of the experience that you were describing in your role, right? So, and I'm not saying that they're not important. And there's some people who get a really, really good high off of checking out
Data.
their numbers, and the numbers are just doing what they're supposed to do. And they're like, check this out. We've got a, 500%, and it's like, that's great. But, it's a component, and I think it's important. But going in and doing that every day, right? It's just not the conversations they were not enjoyable conversations.
No.
So, and when the mentality shifted for me, going from 9 to 5 grinder into, all right, there's a vision, there's a purpose.
I wouldn't say 9 to 5 grinder, but.
Yeah, well.
I'm too immature to do this, dude. Anyway,
yeah,
sorry.
Really, right? So. In any case, no, but like, I would look at it and I would say, okay, coming in, I've totally lost my train of thought, by the way. So
I'm the worst host ever. It's a good point. Let me totally be immature and sidetrack you.
But no, okay. So yeah, when you do something and you're doing it for the money, right? I was like, okay, and don't get me wrong, I was making good money doing it, but. I mean, there was no such thing as an off time, right? So like you have clients on the West Coast, but we were talking about setting those expectations in the very beginning, right? There was none of that. There was no support. So it was like, hey, the client needs you and it's 6 o'clock on the West Coast. You got to answer that call.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, what if they have an issue? What if something needs to be fixed? Well, you got to fix it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that could be 2 hours.
Yep.
And then you start adding the time up. And so in the role in which I was in, I had other people that were working with me too. And they were like, hey, Ryan, I'm burned out. Like, when do I get to unplug? And I would go present those issues. And it was like, well, we can't do that to our clients.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I jumped into the more creative aspect of working with clients and creating partnerships that were meaningful with clients that the conversation changed. And it was no longer, what's my cost per conversion, or I need to know that ROAS. It was more about like, hey, I love what we're building together.
Yeah.
Hey, I have this idea. What do you think about that? And it would be things that weren't even related to what we were doing.
Yep.
But you become that resource for them.
Yeah.
And so
I agree. And my dream vacation is bringing my camera and photographing people, right? So it's not an accident that my job is bringing my camera and photographing people, right? So when people see me working all the time on vacation, it's because I love doing it. That is entertaining to me. That is relaxing to me. That is what I love doing. So, I've been fortunate enough to be able to say like yes or no to specific jobs based on whether or not they're going to fulfill that check boxes for me, right? Mm-hmm. Creatively, is this client going to work out? And it's put me in positions that once you start focusing on that, the authenticity comes naturally. The clients root for you. They look for new opportunities for you. And the quality of client changes because they become more you, right? And then even better than that, on top of that is, and maybe it's an indirect kind of byproduct of this, or a side effect, is that now all of a sudden all those creatives that were competition aren't competition anymore.
They're not.
Right?
No.
They're friends, they're colleagues, they're mentors, right? And you can now look at them and go, it doesn't matter what you send. If you were to send something to my clients, they'd still go with me because they know that I am giving them the best product. I'm having fun doing it, right? And they know I'm going to be the most passionate about it. So then that allows you to then, it's such a weight off your shoulders. When you're not looking at another photographer, like ready to get into a knife fight with them, like, what are you doing on my turf?
It's an odd thing too,
you know.
because you talk about like Mad Men and all that kind of stuff. It was very cutthroat, right? And even now, still the industry has some of that to it. But when you remove yourself from that and you're like, hey, we're confident in what we do, we produce a great product. More importantly, we have a great relationship with the people that we work with.
Yeah.
Then it's like, it's like going to a fight and somebody's like all huffed up about it, and you're like, hey, how are you?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I agree. I actually like seeing competitive photographers and then just taking the wind out of their sails because they just don't, there's no chance that I'm not threatened by
and I'm not even
any
interested.
of them. And it has nothing to do with my work or ego. It's just I'm so confident in the relationships that I've built with my clients based on interaction, right? And communication, that my work is secondary. It truly is. Like my clients like working with me. I have great relationships with them. Could some of them be better? Absolutely. But they know that it's so different. It's so different. Like it's a different mind frame to have than just like, I've got good work, no one's hiring me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I love building brands, right? I love building these companies and see them make their transition from fledgling, like we have no idea what we're doing, brand new, right out of the nest, or even brands that have been established for a long time that are like, hey, we really just don't know where we want to go, right? And then having those conversations and creating something, that's what it's about ultimately. It's about creating something. And so, there's no ego, there's no, it's a partnership. Like, let's build something cool together. And I saw
a meme the other day, because everything's memes, but it was a client will become your friend quicker than a friend will become your client.
That's true.
Right?
That's true.
And it is true because you were a client.
I was.
You were a client of mine, and then we were in each other's weddings. Like it's like, and we're going on 25 years.
Yeah.
If not 26 years, and it's like most of the relationships I have. I know.
We're so old.
Most of the relationships that I have that I hold, near and dear were relationships from client relationships that we built into this. So it's people want to buy you. They want to invest in you. They want to invest in who you are. And as a creative, it's sometimes it's challenging to to do that. But I don't know. I think the branding goes hand in hand with what I do most of the time, which is, I do a lot of branding. I do a lot of graphic design.
100%.
A lot of people don't know, because a lot of what I put out there, I only put out a lot of photography because it confuses people, right? Like if they all of a sudden they see some PowerPoint presentation that I designed for a CEO, they're like, what's going on with Rich, right? So I have to be careful because you just can't really put all that out there. Last month I did a huge presentation in Vegas that was 23-foot tall projection
awesome.
mapping.
Yeah, I saw
that
the
was a
pictures on
PowerPoint
social.
presentation essentially, right? And I had people write me like, I didn't know you do this, and it's like, I do a lot because I have to survive, right? But I do those things because I am genuinely passionate about design as much as I am photography.
Yeah.
The difference is that each of those things I've been able to niche down to where I won't shoot a wedding, regardless of the amount you want. I will actually convince you not to hire me, right? I will, I'll tell you. And I've talked myself out of jobs before. People have called me up, even with design. I want this, this, and this. Actually, I'm not the guy for you. You should call this person. She'll take care of you way better than I will.
Well, I think
because this is going to help, right? And then are you serious? You're going to try to talk out of this job? It's like, it's not worth it.
Well, it's knowing your clients. It takes away that competitiveness, right? You were talking about earlier because now you're a referral partner.
Yep.
Right. But it ultimately all comes down to, and it's the same for both of us, right? We're giving more to it's giver's gain, right?
Yeah.
You want to give more to somebody, and if you're not the right person for it, then say it. But if you are the right person, just know that relationship, the reason it works, the reason why these friendships last, like our friendship, it's,
Yep.
and at no point in time ever in our friendship did I feel like you were taking, right? You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
And I'd like to say that my clients don't feel that way, right? It's about giving them more than I'm getting out of it.
Correct.
So, because I want you to look good, right?
Yeah.
I want your brand to really be amazing. Like I want you to be successful as a person, as an individual.
So it's funny because like I always joke that like I'm like the collector of people's portraits. Like I like going around and collecting. They're like Pokemon to me.
I don't know if I
right?
would say that. That's,
Like what do you mean? Like I like
sounds
collecting not people, but like portraits of people, Ryan.
I was trying to throw something back at you
Yeah,
for the commenter.
good luck.
Yeah.
But I like to travel. I like to collect photos of people and individuals, unique individuals, right? And it's almost like with what you do with branding, it's more about collecting the success of those clients and turning those into stories and saying,
It's their story.
like here's how we help this person succeed at their goals and their dreams. And most entrepreneurs, they're not getting into this because they love working. They're getting into it because they love what they do and they have an opportunity to turn money or to turn a profit or make money off of it. And helping them succeed at that helps them fulfill that dream or goal.
Yes.
Like look at
Yes.
back to Four Rivers, like there was a passion there before there was a desire to have a barbecue chain.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That passion has to exist with what you're doing. And the passion to feed people, the passion to come together over food, that I don't even know the owner is John Rivers, I think. I don't even know him, but I guarantee you that's what it is.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
guarantee you he has a passion behind bringing people together with food and coming together on that. Oh, I happen to be good at it.
Yeah.
Let's share this with other people. Let's make some money off
Well,
of it.
and those
go
are the
from there.
brands that are successful. Those are the
Yeah.
companies that are successful. They have a story that they're telling through their product or their service or their whatever. They want to share something with people. They
Yeah.
want to give, right? Sure, there's opportunities to make money from that. But, if you start at trying to make money without having anything to give,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
I
So-
did a gig for it was a celebrity chef cruise. I was hired to take video or to do photos of the event, and admittedly, I don't watch Food Network. I knew some of the talent that was going to be on this cruise, but I really didn't comprehend it. Like it wasn't my thing, right? So I went and instantly was blown away, shocked at the level of fame that chefs have, right?
Yeah.
Mind blowing.
Yeah, of
right?
course.
So I photographed this and I thought it was going to be challenging. And even people that, I work with were like, this should be interesting. Like, how are we gonna, we gotta turn this into what?
Now, is that because you thought they were saying because they thought the celebrity personalities would be challenging to work with, or just logistics of shooting on a cruise?
If I were to pitch to you this idea compared to like a band, instantly you'd be like, what's gonna happen? Right? Like
What am I gonna shoot?
What is the engagement that's
okay,
gonna
I got
happen?
you.
Like, how is this possibly gonna be entertaining? And that was pure ignorance because it was entertaining. I had a blast. Like, legitimately was shocked at the accessibility that the chefs made themselves and the stories that they told on why their passion was food, right? And how they just brought it in and they were naturally entertaining hosts to the point where there wasn't a single bored person. Like, legitimately everyone had an amazing time. And a lot of people involved were just like, this was amazing. It was so just heartwarming and inspirational in a non-cheesy way, but like,
Yeah, no, I
it
get
just
you.
really surprised me and opened my eyes to like this new world that I didn't even, like before that I was just like, okay, TV, like, yeah, I like,
They're just,
I love food.
yeah, they're just
But
people
it just
on TV.
didn't, it didn't
Yeah, yeah.
really like click to me until I went there, met them, and experienced, their connection with their fans, right? So these are people that became famous for being talented, not just in the kitchen,
Right.
but also speaking and listening and talking to people, because that's a big part of it, right? So that they were able to take their passion and turn it into something even greater, right? And that's what I think we all kind of strive for. I mean, I've seen photographers try to do it. We have celebrity photographers that stand out, and they still are trying to push that to that level of that. They'll probably never be at that level when it comes to but then again, I'm sure 30 years ago, people were like, celebrity chef?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But
Food Network was all very informational and
Yeah,
how
yeah.
to, back when TLC was a thing and,
Yeah.
and the History Channel had history on
So
it.
who knows? I mean, maybe that's the goal, is to become the celebrity chef of your craft, or your talent, or your
But
industry.
I would say even with some of these folks, again, I've never met them, but from the way in which you're talking about describing what your experience was like with them, right? It all still comes from their passion, right? So they probably wouldn't, if they had not reached the level of fame that they had now, they would still be loving what they do.
100%. And I genuinely believe that about every single one of them that I met or worked with.
Yeah.
They would. I didn't once get the feeling that they were there to fulfill an obligation. Every single one of them was engaged, interested in what was actually happening, and genuinely present.
So I'm just curious. So you had all these amazing meals, I'm sure, right? So what was if you could pick one? You don't have to tell me who cooked it, so that way you don't who the chef was behind it, but what was your favorite?
So I'm not like a food guy, but I think for me, food again, a lot of the meals that we got as crew weren't in the same setting as the food was delivered to guests, right? So it's hard to be like, this was my favorite. I mean, it all tasted really good. But again, the point was the memory that you're making around that food.
Yeah.
The company you're with. That's so much more for me. And that's the stories they told. I think what surprised me was there was a watermelon feta salad that I looked at and I was like, ugh, why would I do that? And then I was like, well, it is made by a celebrity chef. I should try it.
Yeah.
And I did, and it was amazing. So I'm happy that it kind of convinced me, well, why would they give me
So yeah, whichever
something?
celebrity chef cooked that, no, you have
Yeah. Yeah. But every single one of them super engaged, and it turned the experience into, I don't know, even though I wasn't a food person, I felt very seen, because I'm passionate about photography. This is my food. This is what I do, right? And I feel like chefs have that kind of respect, right, for craftsmanship. So yeah, it was just very interesting.
Love that, yeah.
So we're at an hour and 20 minutes. This
Wow.
is the longest creative rant ever. So I'm gonna wrap it up because
that's fine, yeah.
we
probably keep talking and
I'm
talking forever.
2 of these deep, and I gotta go, man. So I always say this, but I am genuinely gonna try to do more of these more frequently.
Yeah.
We'll have Ryan back on.
Yeah, I'd love to be
talk
back.
about marketing again. We're gonna bring back some other guests as well. But the idea is to talk about the common things that happen as a creative, as a vendor, or someone in a creative field. And yours is more. It is more related. It's easier to lose sight of the creativity in yours because it is more.
There's so many elements to
analytical too.
There's so many elements
attach
to it,
those
yeah.
things, but you can get creative with anything. So anyway, I'll get better at switching the camera too, and we'll get better at linking these. Unfortunately, no one's been able to comment for some reason.
Oh, okay.
This seems to be broken, or else
Okay.
no one really cares what we're talking about. We're just talking to no one. But next time we'll make sure that we can respond to you guys and engage a little bit more. Maybe we'll just take this directly to Instagram or something. But it's yeah. Next time we'll get it going. So yeah, thank you guys for tuning in if you did.
Yeah.
And if not, thanks for rewatching it on the rerun.